"Are you suggesting dark powers?" he whispered, horrified. The old man nodded slowly. "Yes, but they can bring people to you. If you ever want this power, call out for me by saying 'Great One' 3 times, and I will guide you." David was born into a devoted Christian family. His parents loved him deeply and raised him with strong values, guiding him to embrace faith and spirituality. They made it a point to attend church every Sunday, teaching David the importance of prayer and devotion. Young David absorbed these teachings, but as he grew older, he started to drift in a different direction. Instead of following the path his parents had laid out, David chose to live a carefree life, indulging in parties and romantic flings. He enjoyed the freedom of his choices, avoiding the responsibilities his parents hoped he'd take on. Observing David's behavior, his parents grew increasingly concerned. They often sat him down, gently urging him to reconsider his path. "David," his mother would say, "it's time to turn back to God. Think about dedicating your life to something meaningful, like becoming a pastor." But David resisted. "That's just not for me," he would reply firmly, unwilling to trade his lifestyle for a life of devotion. One evening, his mother, overcome with worry, sat him down with a heavy heart. With tears in her eyes, she said, "David, you mean the world to me. It pains me to see you like this. If you don't change, I'm afraid I might lose myself." Her words stunned David, shaking him to his core. The thought of causing his mother such sorrow made him pause and reconsider his choices. After much contemplation, David reluctantly agreed to make a change, not only for his sake, but for his family's peace as well. With his family's encouragement, David slowly embraced a new direction, and after long discussions, he finally committed to a life dedicated to faith. His parents were overjoyed and immensely proud of him when he decided to become a pastor. Opening a small church, David threw himself into his role, spreading messages of love, kindness, and faith. His congregation began to grow, and he felt a sense of fulfillment and purpose. However, things took a challenging turn when a new church, led by Pastor Jerry, opened nearby. Pastor Jerry's services were filled to capacity, and stories of miracles and healing spread quickly. People from David's congregation started attending Pastor Jerry's church, drawn by the tales of instant blessings and transformations. Soon, David's church was nearly empty. Rows of seats that once brimmed with faithful listeners now sat vacant. The sudden decline weighed heavily on him, and he began to question his purpose. One Sunday, as only a handful of people showed up, David felt a growing sense of inadequacy. He confided in his parents about his struggles. "Mum, I'm failing. People are leaving for Pastor Jerry's church because of the miracles they see there. I'm starting to doubt if I'm meant to be a pastor at all," he said, his voice filled with frustration. His mother listened attentively and replied, "David, remember why you started this journey. It wasn't about performing miracles, but about sharing God's love and teaching faith. Trust that God has a plan for you." Her words comforted him, giving him the strength to persevere. Determined to stay true to his mission, David started reaching out to people, speaking about faith and forgiveness on the streets. He hoped to rekindle interest in his church through his message of love, without relying on miracles. One morning, a former congregant approached him, expressing her disappointment. "Pastor David," she said bluntly, "your church lacks miracles. People need proof of God's power. Without miracles, your words are empty." The harsh criticism stung, But David tried to remain composed. "Faith isn't always about miracles," he replied. "It's about trusting God even when we don't see instant results." But his words seemed to fall flat, and she dismissed him with a laugh, adding, "If you want your church to survive, show people real power." That night, as he wrestled with his doubts, an unexpected visitor appeared, a mysterious old man with a wise and knowing expression. The old man seemed to understand David's troubles and offered him a tempting solution. "Pastor Jerry's miracles," the old man said, "are not merely acts of faith. They come from a power beyond ordinary prayer. If you want people to believe in you, you can use these powers too." David felt a chill. "Are you suggesting dark powers?" he whispered, horrified. The old man nodded slowly. "Yes, but they can bring people to you. If you ever want this power, call out for me by saying 'Great One' 3 times, and I will guide you." Though tempted, David couldn't bring himself to take that path. "No," he said firmly. "I want my church to grow through God's love, not through tricks." The old man simply smiled and vanished, leaving David with a troubling choice. David spent the night reflecting on his mission. He resolved to ask Pastor Jerry for advice, hoping to learn how to grow his church in a meaningful way. The next morning, he visited Pastor Jerry's office, asking him directly about his success. But Pastor Jerry, offended by the implication that he used some special power, dismissed David angrily, refusing to offer any guidance. David returned home feeling defeated and humiliated. The mysterious old man's offer haunted him, and in a moment of desperation he called out, "Great One, Great One, Great One." The old man appeared, eyes glinting with satisfaction. "I knew you would call," he said. "Now, I can guide you, but you must be willing to take a journey to unlock the powers you desire." David's heart raced with both fear and curiosity. The old man spoke of a ritual involving 3 magical items, each representing a different test. Driven by desperation, David agreed to the journey. Under the old man's guidance, he ventured into a dark forest, where he found a golden feather guarded by a fierce creature. Summoning his courage, he seized the feather, and the creature retreated. Next, he entered a misty cave and declared his devotion to God, which allowed him to retrieve a glowing blue crystal. Finally, he climbed a treacherous mountain to reach a silver chalice, completing the ritual. With the 3 items in hand, the old man commended David, reminding him that with great power comes great responsibility. He urged David to return to his church and use his new strength wisely. The next day, David, feeling renewed confidence, went out to preach, hoping to demonstrate his newfound abilities. When he tried to heal a crippled man, however, nothing happened. His congregation, expecting miracles, turned away, laughing and mocking him. Humiliated, David returned to his empty church and in a moment of anger called out to the old man. The figure appeared, his expression cold and calculating. "Why did you deceive me?" David demanded. "The powers didn't work." The old man chuckled darkly. "There is a final step," he said. "If you want true power, you must make a great sacrifice." David felt an emptiness creeping into his soul. His achievements, though impressive, came with a haunting loneliness that seemed to grow each day. He had sacrificed so much: his mother, his father's trust, and even a part of himself, to gain this power and respect. But now, in the quiet of his own heart, he began to wonder if it had all been worth it. The people adored him, celebrated him, and sought him out for miracles and guidance. Yet he felt as if he was standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into an abyss. He thought of his father's words about true faith and began to feel the weight of his decisions. One evening, as he stood alone in the empty church, the old man appeared once more, his face hidden in the shadows. "You've gained everything you asked for, David," he murmured, his voice like a slithering whisper. "And yet, you seem dissatisfied." David's eyes narrowed. "Is there anything more you want from me?" "I've given everything you asked for," he replied, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. The old man's grin widened. "Power demands constant sacrifice, David. There is always more to give. And as you grow in strength, so will the sacrifices." David felt a chill run through him, but he squared his shoulders. "I've given enough. I don't want to give up anymore." "Then your power will wane, and everything you've built will crumble," the old man sneered. "It is your choice, but know this. Once you seek power through sacrifice, there is no turning back." As the old man's words echoed through his mind, David felt a crack in his confidence. Had he sacrificed everything he loved, only to be left with nothing but hollow power and eternal loneliness? In the weeks that followed, the miracles he performed began to lose their impact. People whispered again, questioning his strength and integrity. Slowly, members of his congregation started to leave, seeking other leaders and prophets who could offer them more. One by one, the people drifted away, and soon David found himself preaching to rows of empty seats. One final night, David knelt in his darkened church, looking up at the altar with hollow eyes. "God," he whispered, though it felt foreign on his lips, "if there is any forgiveness left for me, please help me find peace." But no answer came, only silence, deep and unyielding. In the days that followed, David left his church and his once glorious ministry. He wandered the streets alone, feeling the weight of his choices. He knew he could never regain what he had lost, and yet he yearned for the redemption he had sacrificed long ago. And so, David faded into obscurity, a man who had once held the world in his hands, but lost everything to the dark path he chose. Those who remembered him whispered tales of the fallen prophet, warning others of the cost of ambition and the peril of forsaking love for power. Subscribe to my YouTube channel right now